I'm Pasquale Marco Veltri.
And I'm Ian Wright of Painting My Life.
And you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's May 26, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are published to celebrate the exhibitors of this year's virtual edition of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. TCAF is an annual event gathering comic book creators from around the world to promote broad and diverse voices towards the betterment of the medium of comics through panels, keynote exclusives, and just basically enjoying the fun of comics. On this episode, I chat with Marco Veltri and Ian Wright about Painting My Life at TCAF 2021. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Marco and Ian have been working together on creating pages for Painting My Life for 5 years. They have created several collected stories and are now working towards a second series of science fiction stories called Dimensional. According to the Painting My Life website, the story involves a painter named Alice begins to believe she can walk into her own paintings. Traveling to the world within her paintings allows Alice to escape the realities of her life. Inside of a dream world where gargoyles and witches are at war, Alice discovers new magical powers she can't control. With her newfound powers, Alice must travel through a magical world at war as she struggles to find a way home. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Marco Veltri and Ian Wright about Painting My Life at TCAF 2021. So, Marco Veltri and Ian Wright, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
No problem.
Sure,
Thank you.
No problem.
I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creators about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book you read? And I'll ask Marco if you could go first.
Sure. I have pretty vivid memories of picking up like an ancient old Batman issue that was it's like a series of 3 called The Many Deaths of Batman. Around 430, something like that. It was like I was a little new to that stuff, drawn in by the movie and things like that. And it was just the idea of it. And then most of the panels were silent. And around the same time, I don't think they should have sold it to me, but I bought Batman Arkham Asylum within the same week. Mm-hmm. And opening up that hardcover, like I didn't even know what I was looking at. And you're flipping through these pages and like, is this a comic? And just changing what I thought a story could be at a really young age.
Was that Sienkiewicz did that one?
I think it was John Bryan, I think, did Death of Batman. Then it was, I think, Grant Morris that did.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And David McKenna.
There you go. Okay, sorry. I'm getting mixed up there, but all good stuff for sure. How about you, Ian? What was the first comic book you read?
Well, technically, it was from a birthday party. We had the gift bags you get after a birthday party when you're a kid. And I had 2 comics in there. I had Sectors Volume 4, and I had a Return of the Jedi comic.
Ooh,
so
wow.
Those were the first comic. That was 1985 or 6, I believe. I spoke to Marco about this before, and he also had a Sectors comic from that era.
I do remember that.
Yeah, we were reflecting on it seemed like their quality seemed to go downhill pretty steeply by the last volume of it. They didn't even bother coloring the cover. They just had the flats there, and that was it. But I never followed it. That
didn't turn you off comics at all, though.
Well, no, it didn't turn me on or off, really. I found it interesting, but I got to admit, I didn't really. I don't read much. I read graphic novels, but comics themselves, I like the artwork. So Marco will always give me like something that's inspiring, and it wasn't until around 2006 or 7 that I found the Club Udon Street Fighter series, and they did several other Dark Stalkers. And I really liked the Alvin Lee style that he had in that. So I bought a whole bunch of those. It wasn't really until then. That was, only about, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, that I really started to buy the comics themselves to really look at the art, because that really struck me. And also, there were people there who went to Sheridan, which Marco and I also went to. So
very
it was
good.
kind of nice to see some fellow Sheridaners doing well with that. But
Sure.
then also, Marco would also turn me on to new stuff as well. And I really like a lot of the strong black and white contrast stuff. Sean Martinborough, I believe his name is. I had a book about his work. Greg Capullo, I liked his work as well. Even Jim Lee's work as well. Marco gave me one of those books with one of the Batman ones. So yeah, I got to say, I really, Marco will give me a book and I'll just sort of, I'm looking at it like I'm looking at an art book. So I'll be like, oh, that's nice. Oh, that's nice how they did that angle. Oh, that's, I'll skim through the text a bit, but I do read graphic novels. Like if I'm really going to read something, like I like a Durf Bachter, I think his name is. I just read one by him about Kent State. So I like the kind of the historical ones and the sort of long format ones as well. The shorter ones, more comic book styles, I'll mostly just look for the artwork and just think of, see where I can be inspired by certain styles. And so I kind of look at it a different way from, I guess, how a writer would look at it.
Sure. No, that makes sense. How about you, Marco? Who influences your work today?
Well, I think if I go back in time a tiny bit, I think I'm an old Neil Gaiman head. Then, he transitioned to Alan Moore, and then I fell into a Hellboy crevice. I think I have a thing for like myths that are created. Now there's a bunch of Tom King stuff that I'm reading, and Bendis and Majorly Lou and Gail Simone, Kelly Sue DeConnick, like are pretty deadly, and Isola. So I jump around from different writers and sort of follow a writer for 3 months, try to go back and read a lot of their stuff. But I think in terms of influences, without knowing it, I think because Ian and I actually took these Ty Templeton classes eight years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
His comic
is that long ago?
Yeah, boot camp, the comic boot camp, and I think he kind of taught us how to walk. So I think he is a major influence on us, just because he literally taught me the alphabet of comic books, and I'm still learning how to walk. And I think there's another example of someone just gives away information is is just on Jim Zub's page. The amount of information that you can learn, and of course his work as well, like Wayward and all the stuff that he's working on. But it's very rare to see someone just give that information away. So Ty Templeton and then the stuff on Jim Zub's webpage were just, I think, where we learned a lot like 8 or 9 years ago, and we're still learning, of course, but that's where I think where we really started to like stop reading and making.
Right. No, absolutely. Good stuff there for sure. So we're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So with that in mind, I'm wondering if you have any favorite convention or festival moments from the past that you like to share.
Guess
and Marco, if you could
I can start. Sure thing. Well, I think for me there was a couple of them, but it's one of those things like the first couple conventions where you're not used to it, and you just see the stream of people just going by you, which seems crazy right now due to COVID. It seems insane the amount of people that used to be at these conventions, and just the idea that we had a completed book, because that was like maybe 5-6 years ago we started doing our first fan expos or something like that, 2017-ish, I'm not even sure. But for me, like the first couple ones were the most memorable to me, because it's just all of a sudden you were working for 3 years on something and now it exists. And I think I also remember us going to let's see, like my brain is freezing now, but there's a couple of at Hamilton, as just a good vibe there, and also Niagara Falls. Just sometimes the slightly smaller ones have a better vibe to them. So
yeah, Mississauga was nice like that. It was smaller and it was more artist based rather than big celebrities, and so it was a much more focused crowd.
How about people that you look up to? Did you have any opportunities to meet up with artists or creators at these shows?
Yeah, we do. I don't know if we actually should be name dropping anything, but I remember our first, it's a weird time to like go and meet people at conventions right now. But I remember, without naming any names, there's a few creators that were very friendly to us when we walked up to their booths like 6-7 years ago, and now it's kind of crazy to us that now we're at TCAF with one or two of those creators that were kind to us. So it just, and of course we know that we got they're decades ahead of us, but it's just that kind of, that kind of, you can see your own progression a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I was very lucky attending TCAF one year to actually bump into Darwin Cook. And I literally thanked him. I said, thank you for DC's New Frontier. I said, that's tremendous. So he's a monster of a talent, and it's a shame he's gone. But you do get the opportunity to meet up with folks. And I think, if anything, and I think we've seen it on Twitter, it's like if you see someone that you know and you like, you should say something to them.
Oh yeah, I do remember. Right. What did I think? Like, Twitter is just this crazy universe, but I do remember tweeting once, like, when I grow up, I want to be Gail Simone, and she like retweeted it and liked it. Doesn't mean I know her or anything's gonna happen there, but it's just this common universe of of people that are supportive and like are there to just make comics.
Sure,
and quite humble too. Like my biggest kind of starstruck experience with that was with Glenn Fabry at the Hamilton Comic Con. Because I have his dynamic anatomy book. What's it called? Anatomy for Comics or something like that. I can't remember. That's not the exact name of it. But I was always a big fan of his style and his. He does some very realistic covers. A lot of people were there for his Preacher covers.
Oh, right.
But I was there for his his art technical manuals. I think I may have been one of the only people there. It was actually, I didn't even know Preacher. I just knew his life drawing books. And so I spoke to him at his table too. And I at one point said, well, when I was leaving, I said, oh yeah, I just want to say, thank you, because you're a real influence. I've learned a lot from your styles. And he just kind of laughed, like not really at me, but kind of laughed that he would be influential to somebody.
Right,
like he was
right.
Extremely humble, extremely self-deprecating, but
sure.
He's an excellent artist. So it was really cool to meet this guy in person. He'd come all the way from England for the show.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So I want to talk a bit about the project that you were exhibiting at that show. Maybe you could talk a bit about it and the origins as well.
Sure. It's a fantasy story where a painter's paintings come to life. So without meaning to, our lead character creates a new world where she can travel to, full of gargoyles and witches, sort of an Alice in Wonderland, Narnia idea. And once she travels there, she has to find a way back home. And it's just this idea that I fell into of what if you could use your art to change your life. And when that happens, sometimes you create monsters instead of solutions. And just the idea of having someone who has to paint their way out of their problems instead of punching was the starting point, the center of the idea. And from there it just kept growing to different worlds and different places and islands she could go to. So sometimes the problem with stories like this is they just get too big. So we're sort of just started with a small start of it. We have the first arc, issues 1 to 5, that were at TCAF.
Oh, very good. Very good. And what was the inspiration for it? Were you in like an art museum and just said, hey, what about this?
Well, I think for me, like in terms of storytelling, I actually started as a painter, not a good one, and drawing on my own time. I even remember like me in grade 8 or 9 sending in pitches to Dark Horse, and they were so kind to send a rejection letter because I didn't know idea what I mailed something in, and they actually sent me in a polite rejection letter. So I'd always been chasing different ways of telling stories. So it started with painting and drawing, and then I moved into photography and filmmaking, and then came back to some drawing and painting, and then sort of now just write down what the image might be and pray that Ian can understand what I'm writing.
Well, that's a good segue into our next question, which is about your collaboration process. You mentioned, Marco, that you're the writer, Ian, you're the illustrator artist. Mm-hmm. How do you two work together? Like you just mentioned briefly, but can you walk me through how it works from initial thought to finished page?
There'd probably be Ian's version and my version.
Two different versions of it.
Yeah, well, as an example, like we're working, the Painting My Life is probably a 5-year thing that we started 6-7 years ago, and there's another one we're working on now. So I'm usually a story or two ahead, and it's either financial or it's just timing of working on other things. So like trying to get like 5 pages done in 5-page spurts. So we're usually talking about 5 to 10 pages of one issue at a time, and Ian's sending stuff, and I'm always blown away. It's like Christmas when you open up your inbox and there's a new page from Ian, and it's like, oh, look at that. It's exactly what I thought it would look like, but it's always interpreted and made better than you could ever have dreamt of making it. So I usually try to keep a certain amount of panels that we've learned not to go over a certain amount of panels. That starting out, you always try to do too much on one page. Now we're really simplifying things, so usually I try to get Ian like all 5 issues ahead of time. He reads them, we talk about it, and then we'll head backwards and start dealing with things 1 issue 5 pages at a time, and then when those are done, they go to the colorist.
So Ian, before you put pen or pencil to paper, do you go back to Marco and say, wait a second, this part here would be better if we did this? Like, how does that work?
Well, often, he'll send me the script, and then I try and print it off because I like reading it in paper rather than on the screen. It's just easier to flip through and go back and forth. And then this is the trickiest part of the whole process. I have to read the script, and I have to try and read Marco's mind. I kind of sit there and think, what is going on in Marco's head here? How is he seeing this? And I try and picture what he's trying to, communicate with this. And then I'll go through each box. And this is something I learned from Ty's class of the page layout class. I do quick thumbnails of each of the panels, and then then from that I'll try and arrange it into a sequence that makes sense. Sometimes it's gotten better now, but often Marco will send me like a lot of text, and I got to figure out how am I going to fit all this text into one, or it'll be like multiple actions in one sequence, and it's like, okay, how do I make that into an image? It's but it's gotten better now. In the beginning, it was kind of hard to sort of create that whole idea in one page. There's like a lot of things going on in one page, and now it's like we kind of got a rhythm going down where we sort of we've met halfway, where we know how to negotiate those two things.
And I was going to ask if you're a traditional or digital artist.
Well, I really want to do traditional. It's a thing. It's like painting my life. The vast majority of pages are traditional. I took an inking class at Ty's thing, and like inking. That was what I was saying earlier about the black and white high contrast artists, that I really enjoy inking and making high contrast art like that. So I really enjoy just the pen to the paper. I really got into different inks and just the physical. And it's very soothing, very relaxing. Thing is, though, I've got an iPad. In fact, we're speaking on it right now, and I do have Procreate, and it saves a lot of time, especially with thumbnails. And if I'm going to do a thumbnail and show it to Marco and say, how's this look? And if you want something, move it here. Marco's pretty easy to work with, so there's not a lot of micromanagement or anything. But to kind of just get an idea of how it's going to be laid out, and I'll send him the layout. And it's so much easier to do in Procreate than to draw it out on paper. But I don't know. At the moment, I've been using Procreate for the next book we're working on, the next project, and it saves a lot of time with touching up and editing, but I really, really like traditional. So I don't know. I'm contemplating maybe some move, do it hybrid somehow. I don't know. I much prefer digital or traditional. I really don't like to draw on I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's just not. You're not in touch with the medium as much. I like to see the ink coming out of the pen, and it's a real connection. But on the screen, plus you feel these like EMF frequencies, or I don't know what it is. I feel like my lap is being irradiated as I'm drawing on it. So I can only do it for short stretches, but it really does save a lot of time. So it's kind of like a bit of a deal with the devil. So I guess, I do a bit of both, really. And I did originally I came from, I went to Etobicoke School of the Arts. So it was traditional art all the way up until my 20s. And then I did digital, graphic design, logo design, merchandise design, did illustration and Illustrator, do logos, all kinds of stuff like that. I did that for a long, long time. So I also do watercolors now. So I paint a lot traditional watercolor. So, it's kind of an effort to try and go back to that traditional medium, but I do acknowledge that digital really, you can do a lot more things with it and save a lot of time. So,
that's what I hear from other creators is the speed that you need, especially if you're working for a client or you're trying the gun. So I can see how it benefits, when you're working with Marco to have an idea almost immediately on digital screen, so you can go back.
He's a slave driver. he's there with a whip.
Still waiting for 2 pages.
Oh no!
Still waiting.
I don't want to get you guys fighting here on the podcast, but anyway.
I'm kidding. It's
no.
Marco's very easy to work with, and very relaxed. So
sure, good. So typically and you mentioned it before, when you go to conventions or festivals, it's usually a case where you go up to a creator and ask for advice. So what would you say to someone if they came up to you and asked for advice about making their first comic book? And I'll ask Marco if you could go first.
For us, it was just keeping the story alive as long as possible to kind of learn how to keep going. Like, you got to just keep one page at a time. And when you can get to 1 page and you get to 2, then to 5, then to 10, and finish like one part of a story. I think the problem sometimes people try to do too much at once, but just anything you can do to keep the story alive. Another thing you can do is look for those online classes if they're still around. But I think once things, early next fall or next year, try to find the Ty Templeton Comic Book Boot Camp if you can. I can't even explain how much we learned in those classes. Yeah. And right now, because you can't do that, go right to Jim Zub's webpage, join his Patreon, throw him some money, because I can't even explain how much information this one individual gives away. I've never seen it in any other art field. Someone's so giving of information that most people keep hidden, and really just keep making pages and give yourself the time to learn and grow as a creator. Because it's not going to happen overnight. We're in year 8 maybe of this now, and we're just learning how to, I think, still just learning how to walk and started.
Yeah.
So talk to us in year 20, we might be beginning to know what to do.
Well, that's very good advice. How about you, Ian? What would you say to someone?
Well, just take it, as Marco always says, baby steps. Just do it. You're 1 page at a time. And actually, I was quite amazed when we got over 100 pages on Painting My Life. I was like, wow, really? 100 pages? Oh my God. It's like climbing a mountain. Just do one step. You're not looking to the top and not even really looking below to what you've finished already. Like, usually Marco will send me an update after a while. It's like, oh, here's what we got so far. It's like, oh, wow. Okay. Like, okay, well, what's the next page? And just do the 1 page, and then another day do another page. And I just kind of treat it as a one-off. Each time is a one-off. And I don't read too far ahead. Like, I'll do a skim of the whole script, but I don't go too far ahead, because I don't want to start getting, overwhelmed with how much there still is to do. I just, okay, what's today? All right, do this. Just chip away at it, just little bit by little bit. And, before you know it, you have something. So not to get overwhelmed, not to, and also, Marco helps me with this too, where I'll look at older pages and I'll look at it and think, oh my God, I can do so much better than that. Like, so it's, but I'll kind of keep me on track with that it's because, as an artist, if you're always growing, you're always seeing stuff you can do better and thinking of ways you can improve. So whenever you look at your old stuff, you're always thinking it with the perspective you have at that moment and not the perspective where you were back then. So it's a good thing if you see your old stuff and think how much better you can do, because if you're not doing that, you're not improving.
All right. Good stuff. Good advice there for sure. So we've talked about Painting My Life at TCAF, and I'm wondering what's next for both of you. What future projects can you talk about right now?
Well, I'm usually about 2 or 3 scripts ahead, so I won't jump too far ahead to even scare Ian. But in issue 5 of Painting My Life, we have at the end, the back of it, there's a double-page spread, color like splash page of what's called Dimensional. It's sort of The Martian meets The Fifth Element. A scientist discovers that their experiments are destroying the galaxies, and they have to figure out what happened. It's a colorful science fiction fantasy, and it's more about the limits of science and what you can do by accident. And So I guess the biggest question is like, how far would this individual go to save the universe? And it's just like a fun sci-fi adventure, and eventually building into like our own version of Star Trek one day. But in the first arc's really just about introducing the world and a scientist that accidentally destroys half of the galaxy.
Wow, sounds intriguing. So Ian, is this going to be something that you can do concurrently with Painting My Life? Or
yeah. Well, I think. Okay. Do we have any more Painting My Life?
Yeah, I don't like to tell you that there's more about Wright. Dimensional Part 1, the first issue, that we'll have that probably Toronto Comic Con 2022. Fingers crossed that everything happens. And there will be more Painting My Life down the road. And there's a time travel story and a few other things. Okay. It really, like, if, money fell out of the sky, we could be making, probably, 10 issues, more than 10 or 20 issues a year. It's just a matter. Ian just draws too fast. And I don't make money fast enough, I think, is the problem. So it's a mix of that. So it's kind of a good pace for us to learn and grow. And we might start doing multiple stories eventually, but we don't want to break Ian too quickly. So we want to we'll just keep him, let him know that this is coming down the pipe. But really, the science fiction thing will be probably next March, and probably some more Painting My Life the end of next year, and we'll go from there. I don't know if we'll ever have things both at the same time, but we will when they're both done, of course. So in the end, they'll all be collected, but that's a few years away. But we'll definitely keep going with Painting My Life and the science fiction stories, and then go from there.
Great. Now, the other thing, in addition to meeting with people at conventions and festivals and networking, it's also about buying books. So I'm wondering, where do you recommend people go to buy your books?
So the best place to go would be to the webpage that we have set up, which is www.pmlcomic.com. You can buy physical copies there. We recently just packaged all 5 issues at a discount. Digital copies are available at Comixology, and of course you can see us at the cons that are going to start up again. But right now, our webpage and Comixology.
Great. So where can people find out about your current projects and future projects online? Where do you recommend they go?
Well, the webpage is the first place they should go. They can also find me online anywhere at PM Veltri. So at Twitter, Instagram, we'll be posting things there, and on Facebook, Painting My Life has a page, so they can go there as well. Ian's on Instagram at Ian_Wright_art, I think. So that definitely you can find us through that. But I think the simplest thing to do is if you just went to pmlcomic.com, from there you could find all our internet connects.
Great. Well, gentlemen, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
Oh, that's a deep one. Jeez. Let's let Ian go first this time.
Yeah, I would just say just take it step by step. But we covered that already, but I'd say that's the most important thing of it all, because like Marco was going on about all the stuff to come, so you could take it as, oh my God, how are we ever going to get all that stuff done? But I just see it as, okay, what's the next page to draw? I see the page, okay, get that done. So just, it's a tortoise and the hare. Just be the tortoise, just one step every day.
Yeah, well, I guess there's just something magical about the sequential art where you're actually like projecting a story into somebody's mind. And just the magic of flipping through panel to panel and how that works is just like this big puzzle that we're trying to figure out. So that's just, I think, the excitement for us is just learning how to tell stories in this medium, especially coming from other different types of storytelling. There's just something really magical about comics where it's a personal experience. You're not in a giant room passively watching something. It's actually actively happening in your mind as you're reading.
Yeah, and I would say also having it come to life. This thing that used to just be black and white text now is like this living world. It's this 3D world that lives in your mind when you read the book. So it's that development from just being an idea to being something that is now this virtual world is quite remarkable.
Thanks to Marco and Ian for the chat. You can discover more about Marco on Twitter and Instagram at PM Veltri and online at pmveltri.com. You can discover Ian on Instagram at Ian_Wright_art and online at ianwrightart.com. And you can discover Painting My Life online at pmlcomic.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Please check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.